Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to discuss about an important topic of state locking. Now, one very important pointer that we have to keep a note of is that running Terraform apply simultaneously by multiple team members on the same project can cause Terraform to make concurrent changes to the state file. Now, whenever there are concurrent changes that are happening to the state file, the chances of state file corruptions are very high and it can also lead to inconsistencies. So let's understand this in much more easier way, where let's assume that you have a terraform.tf state file. Now what is happening is you have two team members named Alice and Bob, and both of the team members simultaneously they ran the Terraform apply operation on the same project. And now what will happen? Terraform will go ahead and modify the TF state file accordingly based on the changes that they have made. Now this concurrent changes that Terraform is trying to make to the TF state file, in case if it happens, as we discussed, the chances of state file corruption is quite high and it will also lead to a lot of inconsistencies. So ideally what you would like is at a time there should only be one process that is making some changes to the terraform.tf state file, and multiple processes should not make any change simultaneously to this file. So this is the main aim. Now one simple analogy that I can share is that of the phone. So let's say that I am talking to someone over the phone and one more person calls me. So can I talk with two people simultaneously on a different subject? The answer is no. I might try to, but I might mess up there. So at a time, I should only talk with one person on a specific topic. Similarly, at a time, Terraform should only perform a specific write operation on the TF state file individually. After it has completed, another user might go ahead and it can make the change to the TF state file. So this is the high level concept. Now the question that comes is, generally in the organization you can have 10 or 20 people in the team. How can you ensure that no two members are simultaneously trying to modify the TF state file? And the answer to this is using the state locking feature. So at a high level overview, state locking is a mechanism in Terraform that prevents multiple operations from making concurrent changes to your infrastructure state file, which could lead to corruption or inconsistent state. So let's assume that Alice has ran a Terraform apply and Terraform is actively modifying the TF state file. So what Terraform will do is, during that time where the Terraform is modifying the TF state file, it will lock this TF state file. So in case if Bob also runs a Terraform apply, immediately he'll get an error. Why? Because this current terraform.tf state file is locked by the Terraform that is running through the Alice's user. So let's understand the process of state locking, post which we'll be discussing about this from practical point of view as well. So within here, the first step is that before Terraform performs any write operation on the state file, Terraform attempts to acquire the lock on the state file. Lock, as we know, once it is acquired, it will block any further operations by other Terraform process to modify the state file. In the step number 2, if the lock is successfully acquired, Terraform proceeds with the write operation, maybe as part of Terraform apply or Terraform destroy, etc. And once this write operation is completed, Terraform releases the lock, allowing other processes to acquire it. So at an overview, it would look something similar to this. You have a user, you have a Terraform, and you have a backend where the terraform.tf state file is stored. So at a start, the user runs a Terraform apply operation. Now Terraform, before modifying the TF state file in a specific backend, it will first request for a state lock. Once the lock is acquired, Terraform will start the operation on the state file, primarily the write related operation. And once this operation is completed and the state file is updated, Terraform will release the lock and the final operation will be completed. So once the lock is released, if there is any other user who might want to modify the TF state file through apply or destroy operation, he'll be able to do that. Now one thing that we have to keep a note of is that depending upon the backend, as we know Terraform supports wide variety of backends, depending upon the backend you use, the way in which Terraform locks a state file can change a little bit. For example, if you're using a local backend, Terraform will use a .lock file in the working directory for locking. For example, you see you have a file called as terraform.tfstate.log.info. So this is the log file over here. Once the write operation to the state is completed, this file will automatically be removed. Now the question that comes is, what happens if the state file is locked? In such case, immediately that user will get an error. If you see, the error states that error acquiring state log. It says that the process cannot access the file because another process has locked a portion of the file. So this is how the locking works. Let's go ahead and try it out practically so that it makes better sense to us. Now for today's practical, I am going to create a file called as sleep.tf. And we are going to make use of time sleep resource over here. Let's go ahead and copy this. Again, I'll be adding the final code in the GitHub so you can use that. I'll just add it over here and we'll just keep it very simple. What we are doing is we are telling Terraform to sleep for say 100 seconds. And after this, the apply will be completed. So within our KP Labs Terraform folder, let's go ahead and open it up with terminal. Now at this stage, note that there are only two files. One is the .terraform, second is sleep.tf, third is terraform.log.hcl. Note, do not confuse this log.hcl file with the actual log file. This log.hcl file is specifically for locking the provider version. So in case if I'll open this, it is specifically for the provider specific information and has nothing to do with the state locking. Now from the terminal, let's go ahead and quickly do a Terraform init. Once this is done, I'll quickly do Terraform apply with auto approve. So in this case, as we know, Terraform will go ahead and wait for 100 seconds, and after 100 seconds, the resource creation will be completed. At this stage, it will continue to create. Now at this stage, you see there is one more file that got created, which is terraform.tfstate.log.info. And if you look into the file, it looks something similar to this, where you have a specific lock ID. It also shows you who has acquired the lock. In this case, this is the user, which is Zeelvora. So in case if there are multiple users, this becomes easier to see on who has applied. Now, as soon as the 100 seconds completes, this file will automatically be removed. So in fact, let's go ahead and wait. At this stage, you have 1 minute 10 seconds. So 70 seconds has elapsed. So let's just observe it over here. And now you see automatically after the apply operation has completed, the lock file has automatically been removed. And if you see, the apply here is completed. Now let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and just delete the tf state file again. And what we are going to do, we are going to run the Terraform apply with auto approve again. So again, you will see that you have a log.info file that has been created. Now from a different terminal, at this stage, the apply is still in the creation stage. Now from a different tab, let's assume that you have a different user and that user is trying to run say Terraform plan. Immediately you are getting an error. What it states, error acquiring the state log. The state file could not be read. The process cannot access the file because another process has logged a portion of the file. And we know why exactly the error is coming. Now, as soon as the Terraform has released the state lock, this specific operation will run. So let's go ahead and also wait. Currently 60 seconds has elapsed here. So the apply operation has been completed and the log file has also been removed. So now once the log file is removed, when you run the Terraform plan, this time you will not see any error. Alright, so I hope with this you understood the importance of state locking. Now generally for organization, whenever you are choosing a backend, you have to ensure that the backend supports state locking. For example, let's say console. So within the documentation, you have to verify whether console supports state locking or not. So in this case here, it explicitly states that this backend supports state locking. Similarly, if you say S3, here also you will see that this backend also supports state locking. State locking is a very important feature specifically in a larger organization, and you have to ensure that your backend supports it before you use it actively in production environments. So with this, we'll conclude today's video.